Marco Santini is an impact artist based out of New York City, and he joins the podcast today to talk about how the future of art is based around IRL experiences. I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is Future Signal. Marco, how are you doing? How's life?
Life is amazing. How are you, Jared?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. You know, I actually am wearing my Future Signal swag, and I haven't asked you, is that some Marco Santini swag you got on?
It is, yeah. After I met Beeple, I created artwork every day for 500 days to try to see how painful and amazing that process would be. And one of my designs one day was a GM and grateful. And I start my mornings every morning saying what I'm grateful for in my head, trying to tell my wife or my son or my family about that. And just starts me on a good mood. And I feel like I've translated that a little bit into my digital presence, at least sometimes. But nothing wrong with saying how grateful you are every morning.
My buddy, who I think is definitely going to check out this episode, he's an artist himself. His name's Grant, and he has a show as well, and he does a weekly show. And he has a morning cup of gratitude. He has this mug that says gratitude on it, and he always starts his shows that way. So he'll be very excited to know that yours says GM and gratitude. I am excited to have you. You're here. We met now. A year and a half ago, and that's actually where I want to start the conversation. So I met you at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville, and how did that come to transpire? Like, how did they reached out and they were like, "We want you to come do a live exhibit"? You know, talk to me, please.
So in 2023, I was invited to be part of this event at Art Basel, and when I learned that it was going to be a conference, I actually talked to my team and asked, hey, I'd love to speak at the conference, I'd love to paint at the conference, and one of the kind of intermediaries was like, oh no, I talked to the team, they have no money, they don't want you to be there for painting, like that's the stuff in the morning, you're just there at the nighttime. And I was kind of taken back by that because I feel like there are people who get in the way and these middlemen who just want to do their job, don't want to go above and beyond. And I did a little bit of digging and I realized that Ordinals conference was actually being run by people that I had worked for before, who had commissioned me before. I reached out to them. Not only did they pay me to be there, but they hired me to live paint. And it was because I went above and beyond and tried to figure out my way in there that I met the team that eventually brought me on to sell my first work at Sotheby's. And I created this piece, this illuminated Bitcoin magazine, where I took the first issue, I studied it cover to cover, and I cut it up and transformed it into artwork. And Sotheby's actually brought me into this auction without even seeing the piece. They basically said, hey, we know you're going to do this. We trust you're going to do this. Go do it. And so to basically sight unseen bring me in for my first ever sale was amazing. Bitcoin magazine ended up purchasing the piece. We developed this really fun relationship. I talked to their team. They realized I was doing a lot of stuff, not just in the digital and art communities, but in the social and educational communities. So they said, hey, we'd love to bring you on to our Bitcoin conference in Nashville. We'd love for you to live paint and just absorb the culture and see what it is. And so my pitch to them was I'd love to create this large scale mural. I spray painted it in advance on this kind of step and repeat backdrop. And then at the conference, it was the first time I asked people, not only what does Bitcoin mean to you, but I asked people in a way that I let duplicates happen. So usually when I'm live painting, I don't let people share the same thing over and over. I let them say, try to find something else, try to let them dig deep. But this was really a quantitative analysis to figure out what it is that Bitcoin means to people. And it was, of course, the first biggest answer was freedom and community. But to really hear that so many people felt so strongly about this community, feeling like they don't feel like outsiders when they're among their friends and their peers who believe in this technology was really enlightening. And so very grateful to Sotheby's, really grateful to Bitcoin Magazine, and really grateful, of course, because got to meet you there.
Yeah, I was just kind of like blown away. I've been to a couple crypto conferences before that, and normally there's not someone live creating art in the middle of it. And where you were positioned, you just kind of like when you walked into that part of the exhibition hall, it was just like, here's this guy and this funky art that is here. And so anyways, it was amazing. We were able to talk. I was able to leave. I think we spoke briefly about how my experience with Bitcoin and the journey is intrinsically tied to my work in international development. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, we get to move money around the world on basically, I say it's a private chain. I know it's a public ledger, but basically, if you're in the Bitcoin blockchain, it's a big deal, and you can move billions of dollars for dollars, which is incredible. Because if you've ever moved money around the world, it's kind of frustrating. And many people watching Future Signal are AI, crypto, Bitcoin people. And so they're probably like, why is this guy on to talk about art? But that's really where I wanted to start to anchor it, that you have done stuff for Sotheby's, you have done stuff for Christie's, you've done NFTs, you've created Bitcoin art on the Bitcoin blockchain, as it were. While we're there, can we just talk a little bit more about your experience with NFTs and Bitcoin? I wasn't gonna go right there, but we're already there. Are you doing stuff now on the blockchain? I know you've done stuff in the past. We've just kind of talked about that. Are you doing stuff now on the blockchain? And from your experience at Bitcoin and at Art Basel, which I know there's a lot more digital art now, how much of that is taking up your time as opposed to some of the more IRL work, which I know that's what I feel like you're known for.
So I call myself an impact artist. I mirror the spirit of communities around the world through interactive, collaborative designs. And my favorite thing to do is to go in, like I did at the Bitcoin conference, and drop into a community and really be this mirror and see what it is that makes them unique, that brings them together, that calls them a family. And so at the Bitcoin conference, being able to do that and hear it was so enlightening and empowering in many ways. Specifically to your question, I feel like I have this maybe dual life or just balance between physical and digital artwork. Right now, I feel that I express myself in many ways. I feel like success as an artist for me is being able to create among any platform in any medium and being freely open to that, like having the creative trust in myself, but also that creative freedom to say, hey, I have this idea, let me go run with it. I have this idea, let me go run with it. I've only started out and I've done a few projects that I thought were way bigger than I thought they would be. And to me, I never fully immersed myself, I feel like, in the digital art community in some ways because I never had a project that started out with, zero point 0.1 ETH or like all the pieces I sold were 5 figures and up in terms of USD. And for me, I never had that moment where it was like, okay, let's just get a bunch of people who are big fans and, go into you and it's all about flipping. Like for me, I started out with the NFTs and I started thinking that that was the way to have your digital certificate of authenticity. And that's what I really loved. I looked at it as, hey, if you're going to buy a piece of me over a certain threshold, for an add-on bonus, I will also sell you the NFT that's attached to the physical, and that would allow me and everyone to see who has my piece at what time. And that was what initially got me really excited about the technology. The idea of, and so into that respect, I would take my physical works and use that to influence the digital design. It wasn't until I met Beeple in person that I started this 500-day digital journey and created digitally every day. I didn't sell any of those pieces. They were really just for me. I posted them on X. As we've talked about, I started out in the physical world painting murals and doing large-scale designs, and I kind of built my audience on Instagram and haven't found the perfect transition to X, and I'm okay with that. But I think about what it means to me to be creative, to what it means to create digitally. I love creating in Photoshop. I love creating on Procreate, and to me, I don't know. It's this strange relationship that kind of almost has a difficulty to really define because I create to create, and even so. Interesting example. Today, I'm going to deliver 7 paintings to an incredible client in New York City. All 7 of those pieces were done digitally. I sold them physically. It wasn't sold on the blockchain. It wasn't sold as an NFT. It was digital pieces that then I printed and embellished, and I'm hanging up these large-scale designs. And so when I talk to my clients about this, some people want to have the digital record, the digital NFT or ordinal corresponding to it, and some don't care. And I feel like as an artist, as a steward in this realm, it is important to at least mention it to say, hey, if you're open to it, would you like this? And I'm not going to refuse a sale because someone doesn't want to do the digital. To me, the beauty is being able to give people that option. But it's a very strange and frustrating relationship, I'd say, I have with the digital art world.
I think if you ask any artist who's obviously, I guess there are some artists that were born into the digital. Meaning, when I said the digital, I guess I mean like into the NFTs. That's where they actually launch themselves. But for most people who I've spoken to, you included, it's kind of like they saw this as an opportunity to branch out, to get in front of a different audience, To also maybe get in front of more of a global audience. The story in my head is if you are doing physical art, it's hard to send that around the world in 1 second. Whereas if you are up on OpenSea, anyone around the world who has the Ethereum or the Solana or whatever can go ahead and purchase that. This wasn't on my list of things to chat about, but I actually want to ask you about those 500 days of doing art daily and what you learned from that. Because if you weren't selling them and you were just sharing them, how did people receive that journey?
I think it was very challenging for me. So I was very inspired. The Beeple story is quite amazing. So I found a book that was signed by Beeple. I acquired that book. I ended up cutting it up and I showed one of my friends who's was saying, hey, he works with the Cosmo de Medici team. And he's like, hey, I'm gonna be with Beeple this weekend. I'm gonna show it to him. I'm like, no way. And ended up showing it to him saying he loves it. He'd love to, he said he would repost it if you put it on there. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, biggest digital artist in the world is saying stuff about my work. I end up posting it. He reposts it, gets like 50,000 views overnight. I'm like, this is insane. Like, this is cool. I end up sneaking into the Christie's Art and Tech Summit one year, which was, I hope, will be one story that goes down in my trajectory of really believing in me and believing I was supposed to be there, even though I didn't have a ticket. But I go in there and I see, like, within 5 minutes of walking in, I see a huge crowd surrounding Mike, and I walk over and I wait my turn. I'm like, hi, you don't know me, but like, you may not know me, but like, I'm the guy who cut up your book. He's like, you're the guy who cut up my book. And he takes out his phone and he points to the picture and we got this amazing photo together. And we developed a small relationship of sorts. He sent me over to his brother. I said, I'd love to, show him the book in person. He invites us down to see his compound in South Carolina. My wife and I went down there and I got to interview him for my little video series I was doing called Illuminated. And to hear someone of his stature say, you could see so many of my works in a single snapshot, was very, like, just social proof amazing on that side. But separately, specifically to your question, he gave me a lot more insight. I mean, I read his book cover to cover, but he gave me a lot more insight into the fact that he started his journey to get better at art. Like, he is so, self-demeaning and just saying how crappy all of his artwork is, at least when it was starting. And to hear someone with so much success stating that was kind of inspiring in a way, because I believe that, we're all creative in our own different ways. Like, I believe creativity is turning our thoughts into actions. We all do that every day in many different ways. The way that you dress, the way that you interact with people, the way that you talk to people online, the way that you write an email, like, that's all creativity. We may not just associate that creativity with art. And so I think as an artist, I have my specialties that I really like to work in, but I'm not great at drawing a portrait or drawing, a still life or this stuff. And so when he said it was really about an educational journey, I found that incredibly challenging to not only finish a work in a single day, but to find the time to do that. And so a lot of my stuff that I put out was very amateur and was really crappy as well. But I learned a lot of new techniques. I learned ways to figure out how I wanted to create. Like, I think that there's a beautiful freedom in being able to turn any idea you have in your head into a work of art. And I feel like AI makes that a lot easier for everyone to do that. And I feel like having the tools as an artist makes it a lot easier for me to say, hey, this is what I have in my head. I want to translate that. And so the pieces I'm delivering today, like, I took skills that I learned during that time and use that to amplify these pieces. I'm working on this other project where I'm going to be taking some of these designs and basically changing them, morphing them into dimensionally, but like using them in this project. So it was educational. It was not commercial. It was not financially beneficial, but it was very personally challenging and ultimately satisfying. I thought I would try to do it forever, and it really, really got to me once I hit 500. I was like, I think I need to do this, because it was also taking away from the things. I wasn't fast enough or good enough to create epic works of art in a day. Like, I was creating miniature, random, more like doodles. Like, some of them are okay, some of them were good, but like most of them were really silly. But I pride myself on putting out really meaningful work. Like, when you talk about digital art, and like, another thing that was challenging for me is, like, I feel that coming into the digital art world, a lot of it is about community and friendship and believing in people, but a lot of it is about the transaction and flipping and making money. And I know that's like part of the greater art world, but for me, so many of my pieces are personal and make people emotional and even make people cry when I give them. And to see someone thinking like, oh, this is a family, I got all these friends and family to give a words about what this person's mean to you, surrounded, in a heart with 100 languages. I'm going to go flip that for double or triple next week. Like that just doesn't happen in my physical IRL art world. And so it's been this interesting, learning, challenging path. Like I feel almost not like a phony talking to you because I've had my successes and I've had that, but like I'm not on X every day. I'm not saying GM and talking to all these people and commenting and like that didn't fit into my world of sorts. I consider myself an artist, and wherever that goes, I'm grateful.
I think you're okay for not being on X every day. I think your mental health is highly increased by not
Oh, for
being on
sure.
X every day. And even though you're not saying GM every day, you're wearing a GM t-shirt right now. So I think you can get away with that. I was just kind of I don't think I knew that you did the 500-day challenge, or if you had mentioned that when we connected originally, it just eluded me. I think that that's a really powerful thing, and I put up on Instagram yesterday, as I know many of your followers and your communities on Instagram, that perfectionism is just an excuse for inaction. And I believe it. I think you have to basically, like Beeple said, basically, not don't like have bad self-talk, but like you have to understand where you are and be real about it. Like this is not great, but it's getting better.
The
And
success, the joy is in the doing process.
yes,
It
the
doesn't have
learning
to
is in
be
the doing.
great. Yes, 100%.
Yeah. The perfection is in the imperfection, and in being that like it takes you so long. And this is an anecdote that I was sharing with someone probably about a month ago. We were talking actually as you and I were talking off mic about podcasting, and it's like I shared this thing and I heard this and it's just now it lives in my head rent free. And it was like you had these two groups of people, or you had team A and team B, and they were both tasked with making the best bowl. If you've already heard this, I'm sorry. Hopefully there's someone who's going to listen and find this interesting. Two teams, and they were like, hey, you have to make the best bowl, right, to eat in. Okay. And team A could only make one bowl. They had to only present one bowl, but team B had to make 100. And obviously, as you can imagine, the team A is going to get their one bowl, right? But the team B maybe gets that bowl at number 30 or 31. But by 60 or 70, they fix things that are better in the bowl. And so by the time you get to 100, it's just all of the learnings as opposed to just trying to get that one thing perfect. So really, perfectionism is truly I don't know. I think as any artist or anyone who's building anything, you have to have a bunch of errors. So that's why I wanted to ask you, because I just think that's really cool. And 500 days, obviously people realize this, but that's more than a year. And I think it's really hard to do anything for even longer than like 30 days. Even if it's like, hey, I'm going to go to the gym for 30 days. Most people are just not going to do that.
Oh yeah, there are times at night where I'm like, oh, it's 11:30. I got to sit down and do something. And then there are other days where like I'm starting in the morning and I've got this great creative project and I'm doing it. Even with your bowl concept, though, I 100% agree with that. I also thought that you were going to go somewhere different, though, which was if
Ooh.
you tell people, hey, team A, you're going to make a great bowl. This is going to be amazing. Like your self-talk and how you are approaching it totally changes the outcome. You tell that team A, you're going to make a great bowl. This is going to be amazing. They believe that and they go out and do it. Versus if you tell team B, like, hey, you don't have to make a great bowl. Just do whatever. Like, be lax, or even negative self-talk. Like, you're not going to make a great bowl. This isn't going to happen. There's so much of that internally that can, influence the actual output.
100%. And actually, I should have said each team was tasked with creating the best bowl, and they were going to like compare them. But team A could only make one, and team B had to make 100. Like that's how it worked. And then the idea is that obviously team B got the quote better bowl or the best bowl, using air quotes here. Let's talk about what you're doing currently. We've talked a little bit about some of the digital art world. What are you currently up to? You said, you're going to, this afternoon, you have to go send over pieces in New York City to a client. What are you up to today? What's going on?
Well, I find it beautiful that we're talking today because I have one of my busiest art days probably of the month today. So I feel like every day is a little bit different. I love that as an artist. I figured if I could take you through my crazy day. So after I talk to you, I'm going to go pick up from one supplier a final print, go to a second supplier, pick up the 6 prints, go take those 7, install them in an office in New York City. I have a call with after that I have a call with a major client who I've done over 20 projects with around the country. They want me to do another big one coming up in the fall. I have a meeting with a project where I'm going to be launching my artwork into space in one of the next NASA projects, which is pretty cool. I'd love to share a little bit more about that. And then after that, I am delivering and live painting at this 40th birthday party in Brooklyn for this large-scale mural I created, and had this woman's family and friends all give me words about what she means to them. I spray painted this kind of step and repeat background similar to what I did at the Bitcoin conference, painted all the words that her friends and family share, and then going to surprise it with her 40th birthday party tonight in Brooklyn. So it is a jam-packed, beautiful day as an artist, as a creative, as a curious professional, and I'm just grateful to be starting it on this podcast.
Lovely, lovely. Um, I've I'm kind of blown away, and one of the things I want to talk to you about is your advice for other artists in
Oh
today.
yeah.
But we will get there. Let's focus on your physical art, your mural art, some of the work you've done at schools. When I think about you, I think about you as an impact artist, but I also think about you as someone who has a global reach, not just someone who's just maybe stateside known. So talk to me about where you've painted. You could maybe focus on the school projects, but I feel like you've done some global work as well.
I have, yeah. So I've worked with over 35 schools globally. Before artwork, I was working in marketing and branding. I worked at the Olympics with NBC for a few years, and I just felt like I wasn't really doing something that made me feel like I was making a difference. So I left that all behind and turned to tutoring and mentoring high school students, ACT, SAT, college prep, Common App, resume, all that stuff. And then when I was like, I'm going to do that and try to focus on art. And as art started to build, I started to pull away from the tutoring and mentoring, but I still felt really connected to these kids because I felt like I had this holistic approach of not just making these students better with their grades, improving their grades, but by helping them become better people. And their parents loved it, like talking to them about clubs, about jobs, about the things that they wanted to do bigger and broader than just school. And so when I started to have some success in the art world, I brought the educational aspect to it. And so with my NFT series, a signature series, where I transform these really rare, valuable signed books, signed by Basquiat, Picasso, Haring, Dali, and cutting them up and turning them into physical works of art, but then having an NFT component. I remember hearing people saying, what is your communal benefit going to be? What are you going to give away to people? And I'm like, well, it's a physical product that has a digital COA as an NFT, but I'm going to let the buyer choose a school or a charity anywhere in the world, and I'm going to donate a mural or a painting to that school. And I remember working with Maker's Place, who was great, rest in peace. But they were like, that has nothing to do with the artwork. And I'm like, I know, but there's a really big communal component to that is important to me. And with that project and with just great donors and other projects, I've worked with almost 40 schools globally. I just hit Staten Island last week, so I can now say I've painted in all 5 boroughs in New York City. And when I go into these schools, I feel like really similar to your soccer coaching story. It's like I like to meet them where they are. I don't like to tell them what we're doing. I don't like to say this. Like I want to be on a similar level to really kind of ground us in the conversation. And when I go in there, I ask some kind of unifying questions. Usually, what does a school mean to you? What inspires you? What's important to you? And then I take that and I create artwork with the students and their words. And it really, whether it's a large scale mural, whether it's a painting, it makes the students feel incredibly seen and heard. They very often will do a creative assignment where they take a piece of paper, they try to either emulate my art style or their own. But I truly believe that surrounding yourself with bright colors and positive messaging can directly improve your mental health. And by taking these kids on these assignments, you'll find kids who don't feel they're creative. Oh, I'm not an artist. They get lost in flow. They feel excited to try new materials and to get a compliment from a friend or have me come and be like, wow, that's really amazing. Like, this guy thinks I'm amazing. Like I didn't know I could do this. And so it just opens them up to all these different avenues. And that really bleeds into, I know I've been a little long-winded with my answers here. I just feel really excited and passionate about this, but it leads me into this big project that I want to enact, which is I want to be the first artist to paint 50 school murals in 50 states. And even though I've hit, I think, 13 to 14 states and almost 40 schools, I want to start from zero and kind of start this national tour to bring positive messaging, bright colors to schools, especially schools that don't have great access to art. And I feel like, especially economically, socially, politically, what I love about art is this kind of unifying factor that you don't have to agree on everything to be appreciative of that. I feel like art has a beautiful power to bring people together. And when I do these live paintings and I get answers from all different people, different sides of the aisle, different backgrounds, different religions, like we're all coming together and uniting in response around a common theme. And I feel like every time I do that, it's so impactful to show people that we are more similar than we are divided.
Yeah, art is a extremely powerful thing, which is why I wanted to have you on today. I just think the work that you do is something we need and something we need in the community. And I also just think that In my work, the closer you are, like in my experience in international development, like the closer the kids are to creativity, right? And then that will go into music, that could go into dance, that could go into painting. The closer the kids are to that, the happier they are on some level. And I think when we think back to our childhoods, when we were creating, I think humans are meant to create. And oftentimes as adults, we forget that and we get stuck in a 9 to 5 and we're just turning into, honestly, we just turn into kind of like robots. But the closer we get to creating is where we are the happiest. And I think art is like an output of the act of creation. So I was like, okay, Marco, you got to come on. Let's do that. The 50 schools in 50 states, that's a big deal. How long would that take? Have you like mapped that out? Do you have any idea like where you would start, where you would go? I've looked at maps of how you should do road trips in the United States, and they always are kind of funky because they're maybe not the way you think that you would go. Talk to me about what that looks like. If you found a donor that's going to give you the money and the resources, how long would it take, and what size team? I mean, it seems simple, but as we know, the simple things are the most complex.
Totally. And when I tried to figure out the actual logistics behind it, it just blew me away with how complex it was. I wanted to try to finish it in one calendar year, starting in the fall when school starts and the summer when school starts and then going into the spring. But the challenge is depending on the size of the mural that I want to do at each school, sometimes I could do one really quickly overnight because the idea is I like to surprise students. Like do the creative art assignment, I laminate their cards or use their words, and then I put it into the artwork. If it's a smaller wall, I could do that overnight, but if it's a larger one, it usually happens over the weekend. So if you figure there's 52 weekends in a year, 50 schools, that doesn't leave a lot of room, especially with the summer kids are not around, that doesn't leave a lot of room to make it happen, which is also what a documentary team told me. They're like, probably better to split it up over 2 years, but I just feel once I get it going, like, the research and development phase, which I'm kind of in now, like, I feel like I have more schools that want me to paint than I can. So, like, I feel like finding the schools should be better. But even just logistically, something I didn't think about, like, I want to bring it to schools that maybe don't have great access to art or who would really appreciate it. Going into the middle of a state, it might be a little bit more challenging versus being on the border of a state where you might be able to stay in one hotel and paint two different schools and stay in that same place is like something I just didn't really think about when I had the plan in mind, or even thinking like I'd need to get specific contracts to make sure that they're all signed because I get to the 49th school, I'm like, all right, I'm going to finish this in two more, and they're like, oh, we're not going to have you here. Like that would be devastating to be on a really tight timeline. So the logistics around it are something that I'm kind of growing into as I talk to different advisors and things. But I see how powerful murals can be, having someone that can level with kids be when they're in their space and they introduce them to creativity. Like you said, we are happiest when we are creating. I feel like there's no rules in art. You can do what you feel and not have someone say yes, no. Like I feel like freedom is something we all desire, and I heard that a lot at the Bitcoin conference. I hear that a lot in art world, and there are beautiful ways to have that happen. And by giving people access to creative freedom can just, I believe, bring so much hope and happiness to people who experience it.
Yeah, you hit on things logistically there that I was thinking about. The fact that you have the winters and you have heat and you have massive climates. And the other thing is like the United States is massive. Sometimes people forget that, but like there was a European guy and he was just saying a lot of time the people from the United States get all this shtick because they don't travel or they're not well traveled. But he's like, the reality of it is, even if they see 30 states, they've seen the width and the north and south of Europe, right? Like they've seen actually different cultures, and so yeah, I'm excited for that. Do you have? I mean, obviously you'd like to get going tomorrow, but like logistically, would you wait for like the school year to start, or is that something where you could start? I don't know, this January after winter break, and then go and then maybe run in and break in the summer, like
There's a few different visions. I mean, I think
yeah.
that the ideal vision would be like spray paint a cool bus and travel that around the country and have my spray paints and have my stickers and my t-shirts and like use that. And every time I go to a different school, like they paint the bus or something like that would be so fun and cool. And then it's advertising and it's a home. But the reality of doing 50 states continuously, though it might be the most efficient way, might not just be the most efficient use of a father's time being away from my family, my wife, and my dog. There's a lot of challenges there. So it could be kind of sprints. If it's like, hey, do these 5 states and come back for a little bit, do these 6 states and come back. I think it might be more likely that. The other challenge I'm finding is just the bigger the project, the bigger the the financing required, the bigger the numbers, the bigger the everything. And I'm not used to that world, at least yet, just yet. But my kind of call to action and kind of what I'm trying to find now, where it's like there are philanthropists out there that just have this money that want to give to really positive projects, and not everyone wants just a return on their money to say like, hey, this is an investment, I want to get my money back. Like, there are people that want to invest that money for good, and I feel like this project is perfect for that, and I just need to kind of figure out the perfect way to find those people, share this messaging, share the success stories I've had, and see like, here's what I've done already, and here's how it could be, amplified to 50 states across the country.
To do that and to document it, I love that you were already talking to a documentary crew to kind of like figure out what that would look like. It sounds like you do want to document it. And then would you take a picture from each piece, and would that be put on the blockchain as something else that could
Absolutely.
create an economic benefit, and then also then maybe add to a donation or something?
So a big part of it is that I wanted to get the financing up front, which is a little bit tricky versus getting like a Kickstarter, one of these kind of grassroots, because I think there's a minimum amount that I would need to get all the schools on board, to buy the supplies, to get the travel, and like there's the minimum amount, right? But absolutely, my vision is to take a final photograph of each piece, be able to sell T-shirts or prints of that, but absolutely to have a 50-piece NFT collection, and you're one of the state holders. I thought about selling that in advance. It's like, hey, sponsor your state for X amount of money, and it's these 50 states. But I don't know if people would really buy it based on the assumption, or before they even get the artwork. I mean, that is an idea, and I'm trying to be kind of open-minded and creative with it. But I feel like I like one big thing I've been working on, and you talked about earlier, like telling young artists and telling people I talk to, like, I like to be talking about the ideal plan. There's always like 5, 10 different plans. Like, my ideal plan would be to find one philanthropist who loves the idea, who pays for it up front, who allows me to then schedule it, starting in 3, 6 months, and get it done, have a documentary team cover it, be able to sell the physicals, the digitals, and make it, affordable for everybody. And I really do believe it has the power to not only become a potential New York Times bestseller or bring me to a TED Talk, but I also believe it could be a world record in some ways, and to get Guinness World Records involved. So I like to think of the ideal, and yeah, we always can potentially fall short, but like, if you have a goal, you have a vision, at least it gives you something to aim to.
You said that at the Bitcoin conference, people, one of the things that kept coming up were community and freedom. Having you here and you talking about something that right now is still a hypothetical, and maybe in 2 years will be a Netflix hit, and people are like, oh my gosh, this guy Marco, this is an hour and a half long documentary, but he hit all 50 schools. What do you think would be the two ideas that you think would come out of it? And obviously, I think it depends whether you're at like grade schools or high schools or colleges, and you're going to get a different idea maybe. But do you have any, if you had to assume, and we're in assumption land, and you should never be in assumption land, but if you had to assume, what do you think a takeaway could be based on your current experience, or your past experience, I should say, and current experience of working at schools? What do you think takeaways would be?
I think there's different takeaways for myself versus the students. I think
Sure.
personally, the inspiration, not only for schools, but specifically recently, my uptick in doing more schools came, I think, very much from the lack of politicism I see when I'm creating. 50% of the country is one way, 50% of the other way politically. But when I'm creating, I don't see that. I don't see the differences in people. I see people coming together around a shared topic. And I just love how, even if for a second we can drop our differences and what we are feuding about and what makes us frustrated about the other side, party, whatever, and really come together. I feel like what I do with Impact Art, people can come together through art. And I feel like being able to bring that on a larger scale is a win-win. I also feel that kids don't bring out those differences as much as adults do. Obviously, we talk more, we're more knowledgeable, I get it, but to bring kids together who might have bullying, who might have mental health issues, to bring them together through the communal practice of art is incredibly freeing and incredibly positive for them, to say, hey, this is a possibility. Hey, I can try this. Hey, if I'm not feeling well, like, art is a crazy long spectrum. Like, you can do it for yourself, and no one ever sees it. You can do it for public and sell it. You can do it to feel good. You can do it to sell and to do it for other people. And so providing those options to people who maybe only have a narrow view of what art can be, I think is incredibly empowering.
Yeah, I'm just I'm hoping that some philanthropist hears this and is moved and is like, okay, Marco, let's sit down. That would be great for me to hear that, and that would be, me adding my grain of sand to the other
Heard
side to
it
help
first
me.
here.
Yeah, exactly. We've talked about blockchain. We've talked about Bitcoin. We've talked about crypto, NFTs, and that. And I want to transfer a little bit and transition and talk about AI. How is AI playing a role for you in art? Are you using AI? Maybe even just aside from art. Oh, that's how I schedule visits, or that's how I. I'm just interested how. Artists and basically entrepreneurs are using AI, whether it's in their work or to maybe make their life more efficient so that they can be better in their craft.
I've had a very interesting relationship with AI over the last few years. I started doing AI artwork back in 2019. I was actually the first artist in residence for this company. I don't even know if they're still around, but would take my artwork and basically take a single image and take 50 to 100 other images and smash them together and basically create a filter from all those on top of an artwork. And I showed them in my first ever art show back in 2019, which was called Unity and Diversity, celebrating the fact that we're all the same and all different, which is beautiful. And I remember back then being like, okay, this is interesting. There's a computer program. You can splash these things together. But I remember even at that time, and I feel like there's context here, I remember thinking when the output comes out, and this was before AI was on top of everybody's mind and digital art, I remember thinking, okay, the piece that comes out of the computer, is that my artwork? I remember having a deep conversation with myself, like, can I just sign that piece and say, this is Marco Santini's artwork? Because I feel like when I sign my piece, I am saying I am proud of it. That is me. And at that time, I said, no, it is not me if it is taking my art coming out of a computer. Like, I have to manipulate it physically. That was my vision of it. In some way, to embellish it, to add some paint marks, to design it. I'm sitting right next to two of my AI pieces in the room over here. And it's like I had to change them. I had to put my physical print and my physical mark on it to make it mine. Then it was kind of a lull, 2021, 22 hit. As ChatGPT and Midjourney, all these other Gemini are coming out, I'm starting to play with it. I'm more so curious. I say in the day-to-day now, I have not sold anything that straight up came out of an AI engine. I use it more so for editing my words, Gemini and ChatGPT. I still, even though I studied linguistics, though, I feel like there is a cadence, there is a specific word structure, way that they phrase sentences, which I don't like. Like, I feel like if you showed me two different sentences by a human and an AI, I could totally tell what is AI, and I don't like it. It feels very sterile in some way. But I do see the value in being able to expand your reach to try new things. I should add, one of my art collectors recently called me the anti-AI artist. And when I asked her about this, she said, you create real moments at a space. You bring people together, they give you a word, they share something with you. You create with that in real time, and then I see the output. I take a photo of it, I share it. There's so much that can be replaced by AI, but that human interaction that stops people, brings them into the creative conversation, and then uses that to create something can't be replaced by AI. And so I've been working with this phrase, what does it mean to be an impact artist? What does it mean to be an anti-AI artist, to focus in the present moment and bringing people together?
One of the episodes I did maybe a year ago with a good friend of mine, he comes on and we talk about AI. He's been building an AI for like 7 or 8 years as a coder. We were talking, I asked him, he's not an artist, or maybe he wouldn't, I don't know, maybe he'll take offense to that. I don't see him as an artist, but I said, his name's Andy. I said, Andy, how is AI going to change art? And this was like about a year ago, where Midjourney is just crushing. And I've had Brian Naughton come on and share some of his AI art. And he said, back in the turn of the century, or like 130 years ago, basically when photography became more retail, just as AI has become retail, he said there were a lot of artists that then started to create art that they felt photography could never capture, because photography all of a sudden became, oh my God, we can take a moment. I know for us it seems weird, but we can take a moment and freeze it and then have that. Before photography, you couldn't do that, so everything was just oil and canvas. And so from that, though, you get all the, from what I understand, I could be wrong, you will correct me, I think, but you get impressionist artists, and you get artists basically that were going to create art that photography couldn't do. And I think actually what you're doing is exactly what the collector who's called you the anti-AI artist, you're creating experiences that AI can never replicate, as hard as it wants to, as great as the LLMs get, even when quantum comes. You can't you know, replace IRL connections around art. So that's what, you know, I any thoughts on that, or any thoughts on, is the future signal of art, right, going to be IRL experiences, and are you in some sense in that curve or ahead of the curve?
I've never tried to position myself ahead of the curve or anywhere on the curve. I just like to be myself and try to figure out what it is that allows me to create and be me. I feel like being authentic and being true to myself is incredibly important, and that's what I try to bring out in this creative world. I think when I first heard this idea of anti-AI artists, I kind of took a step back, and it's like all the things that really make me excited, like human interaction, stopping people. Even at the Bitcoin conference, stopping people and asking people, what does Bitcoin mean to you? People look at me like, I've never really thought of that. Like, and they're covered in head to toe Bitcoin gear, like, and it just stops them. And like, so there's this element of surprise. There's this element of interaction. It's a conversation in real life, not with a, chatbot maybe serving whatever. And then being able to take that, input it into an artwork, to be able to translate that to say, hey, your word is here because I put it next to this one, which, kind of correlates. Or it's just building these IRL moments, I feel like, are something that's going to be more and more valuable as AI continues to take off, that will make humans see and continue to see the value of connection. At the same time, and when you bring up the photography example, I feel like that's a huge moment in the creative world. I think Instagram is right there, even just social media, when everyone all of a sudden became a photographer. Everyone had these filters and could be a great photographer. That also spawned, it didn't just kill out all photographers, it really separated the good, mediocre photographers from the great photographers who still have businesses, who still put out amazing books, who were still able to capture in a unique way that was true to their vision. And so there are direct and indirect influences that will come out of AI that I think will hopefully benefit our generation.
I mentioned my buddy Grant. He's an artist, and I mentioned him at the top of this recording. And when we were talking about gratitude, Grant has a saying, and it's not his saying, it's a quote. Maybe you know who the original of the quote is, but he says, everyone's an artist until the rent is due, right? So there's a lot of people out there right now who are artists, and they're trying to make it. And if they hear this episode, they're like, this is where I want to be. I want to be where Marco is. I want to wake up in the morning and be creating. I want to hop on a podcast, talk about my work. I want to be installing stuff for clients in the afternoon. I want to be on a call later that evening talking to a client that's already trusted in me 20 different times for 20 different pieces. What is some advice that you give young artists right now?
I've got a lot of advice. I think the biggest thing as an artist, as a person, is finding your voice and finding your style. I think a lot of people start out by copying other people. When you're a kid, you copy your parents or your friends, and then you find your own emotions, your own persona, and you kind of step into that. I think as an artist, it's similar. Maybe you go to art school, maybe you don't, but you learn other artists, you see what was successful, you try that, you maybe manipulate it, but then you find your voice. I think that's incredibly important. I think starting out, it's also really challenging to figure out, are you going to go all in on art, or are you just going to try it and moonlight while you're doing something else, right? If you're moonlighting, you got some steady pay, you got some money coming in, and you can figure out the artwork, but you have to be able to work crazy nights, and the time when you're not working can really push you, and that's what I did, versus going all in and saying, hey, I need to make money and figure out how I'm going to pay my rent because I've got no other money coming in except the art that I'm going to do, and that's really, really challenging. But that's the difference between a scarcity mindset and abundance mindset. When you have a scarcity mindset, you're like, I'm going to take in everything. Starving artist is like, I will do whatever is going to give me money so I can perform my craft. But as you go up and you learn that abundance lifestyle, and you say, hey, there's a really powerful there's a lot of power that comes with saying no and saying, hey, you want me to just do this exactly as this and you're gonna pay me a bunch of money? Like, cool, but that's not my style. You tell me exactly what to do. It's not really bringing me joy. Like, I can recommend you to someone who would do that and would take that, but that's not what I'm gonna do. There's a lot of power both in saying no and also by spreading the love. To young artists, I always say it's really important to always sign and date your works. My mom taught me that. So when you go back, you're like, oh my God, I was, this age when I did that. That's crazy. Like, I think there's a beautiful aspect in that. And then one thing I do that was very, very successful for me, and I give this advice a lot, and I think it works for some people, is that when you're at least starting out, it's really important to give your artwork away. And I know that can be really, really challenging. But when I was starting out, I started out by anytime I had to go to a birthday party, an anniversary party, a wedding, anytime I had to give a gift, I would invest that money in myself and basically try to figure out how can I make something interesting for that person that they would like. And so it really forced me to push my skills in different ways, how to value my time, my efforts, pushed me to learn different styles. And then as I gave these gifts, people would love them. People would show them on social media. They'd recommend them to other people. They'd say, hey, I saw you did this for this person. Can you do that for me? And then I really tried to figure out, how am I going to price myself? Hours, time, relevant works. There's no one right way in art. There's no one right way to create. There's no one right way to make it. But I think that it's really empowering to hear how other people have done it, because you can see what works for me and what I'm going to take from that to become what I want to be.
The Naval Ravikant quote, which I think about a lot, really resonates for me with what you just said, which is avoid competition through authenticity, because there's no one who can be you as well as you can. And even though when you're saying in art, and this is true especially in music, you'll see someone, you're like, oh well, they sound like so and so and so, and then when they really hit and they find their stride is when they do their own thing that really resonates the most with like them and their brand and their flavor.
That's so true. People like to compartmentalize. They like to say, oh, you sound like X and Y. Oh, I like those bands. I could like it. But then when you dig deeper and you listen, you're like, oh, they actually have their own sound. And so developing that own sound, yes, we can pay homage, and yes, we can try. Like even with my illuminated books, when I first did that, there was a lot of controversy around it. Like, how could you take this rare book signed by Basquiat that's 5 figures and cut it up? Like there's only so many of them that exist in the world. And I'm like, how could you leave this book collecting dust on a bookshelf to just be sitting there and not be appreciating it? And so there is this controversy, and then the other angle was like, hey, that's someone else's work. It's not like a Marco Santini piece, that's a Basquiat piece. And I'm just like, I'm reimagining it. You know, a big part of my work is this interactive component. I go into the schools, I interact, this live painting, I interact. I'm trying to interact with these books in a way where I'm trying to extract the soul of these works and show the visual essence, taking all the pages, taking all these images and making a visual remix of a book, yes, of Basquiat's work, but it's also signed by him. And so I find this incredible value in creating something new that has this old stamp of approval that's been remixed in this new way.
Yeah, you've shared those pictures with me, and I have to say the first instinct I have as like a human being is like, why are you destroying a book? Right? You're just like, and it's signed by Basquiat. But I think if Basquiat were here, he would say, Marco, that's cool. Thank you for doing that. Just the way Beeple did, right?
Yeah, he's like, you're paying tribute to me. He's like, you're not destroying it. You're not like Xing out my name, and just like you're showing a respect and a continuing the conversation of the art started here and now it's here.
Exactly. I want to talk about Instagram. You have a nice following on Instagram, and I think distribution is key, whether it's a business, whether it's a brand, whether you're an artist. Any tips or tricks or you know, how you engage with Instagram? For me, I try to always respond to every comment. If there's a comment, or like every comment, engage with every comment. Do you use DMs? Is that like replacing email? Like, talk to me about Instagram as a tool, not just a platform to share your art.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. So I initially got my initial following on Instagram because of the murals I paint. And so actually even before that, when I did this One Love sticker and wheat paste campaign around New York City, the biggest risk I ever put was putting my Instagram handle on there, because I was doing this illegal campaign. I didn't want to be caught, but I wanted to be found. It's a slight difference, right? So seeing this heart with love in all these different languages, people were like, what is this? This is interesting. And it was communicating with people when I wasn't there. So that was like the first wave of followers. And then as I started creating murals, when people are standing in front of your murals, they're so large and they take over and they want to take that selfie, they see your handle, that's really important. But not everyone's an artist that's going to want to develop that following. So I'm really big on, like you said, responding to every comment, responding to every DM. When you're starting out trying to interact with brands, or, you know, I don't like to do the trend thing, but I know a lot of people will just pop on a trend, and then if your video happens, like it happens. Like I've been posting on Instagram, I posted, it was so ironic. It took me 1,234, literally 1, 2, 3, 4 posts before I got my first post on Instagram with over 1 million views. And it was a summer I painted this pool, did a mural in this pool. My son was adding water to it, and it wasn't planned. It wasn't edited. I didn't have this big plan of like, okay, I'm gonna send it to my editor. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put the music. I'm gonna do it. Like, it was just a random capture in the moment, and it was the video. I spent no money on it versus every other video I've spent money on editing and music and software and all this stuff. Zero money, zero foresight, and that's the one that pops. So there is an element of surprise and just spontaneity. I also think Instagram is challenging because it does gatekeep, like it wants you to get your audience and it's going to not show your stuff to everyone. And so there is this idea of like posting a lot. I don't like to post a lot. I feel like I have a core group of fans and collectors, and I feel like posting every few days kind of works for me. I do stories almost every day, but you got to kind of find out what it is. I think I've been thinking about this a lot recently. I feel like with social media, there's really two main aspects. It's like people want to be educated, they want to learn, or they want to be entertained. And if you're a channel, like what is it that you are focusing on? And so for me, I'm trying to figure that out myself. It's like how much can spreading love and positivity and do these great positive things, like how much is that entertaining for people on a regular basis versus if I was like, hey, I'm going to teach fellow artists to do this, like could it be an educational pitch? Could it be both? Like I think if you figure out what it is and you stay consistent with that, people realize like, hey, this is what I'm going to get. Not that you want to be like, you know, boring and consistent, but that you want to at least know this is the person that I want to support because they're going to be in this realm of interest.
The education versus entertainment is something I'm currently playing with. I'm challenging myself to put up a reel every day for a year, and I'm about 45 days in or something like that. That just shares basically an idea from X, and I bring it over and I put it in a reel because I had one that it's now got 17 million views, which is ridiculous, and it's a joke. It's AI slop. And so you never know. Like if we think about the bowls, this was my third thing. I didn't care about this bowl. I just had to get it done. And I just see Instagram more and more as a tool and not as something where for maybe where I'm going to go consume as opposed to create and just kind of play with it. Because I do think having distribution is a really it's an important thing. It's probably the most coming from the Bitcoin crypto land. Distribution is everything because you can have the greatest token or the greatest project, or you could create the greatest mural. But if you only have 50 followers, unfortunately, the way the world works, it's if you had 50,000 followers, it's just different. So I wanted to ask you on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so two things with that. I want to respond to that because I feel like I tell this to young artists all the time. If you
Hmm.
put your work on Instagram, even if you have the greatest mural in the world and you have only 50 followers, it's going to live there. It's going to get found. Like I feel that social media is a necessary evil as a creator because no matter who your audience is, if you put up quality work, it's going to get found. Someone is going to see it and it's going to help you get to where you want to go. So I really believe in that. And then secondly, I did something which I was very, very, very against recently, which is I paid for Instagram ads. I've always been very, very organic. I really like the kind of interaction, but I was like, I see a lot of people doing it. I've bought a few things and it actually worked on me. So I'm like, if it's working on me, it's going to try it. So I spent $10 a day. I made this ad that's like, this artist paints love in over 100 languages and then customizes it with your favorite friends, names, sports teams, pet names, etc. And I have I don't like 100x my investment for spending for $10 a day in terms of what I've been able to pull in from new collectors, new followers, people who bought pieces for their offices, people who bought. I did a 57th wedding anniversary in California. I did an office in Arizona. I'm about to do a woman celebrating someone who passed away in Florida. Like you want to connect beyond that. And I feel like that's part of the gatekeeping of Instagram is that, hey, if you pay for it, they're going to open up the floodgates a little bit more to new followers and to more people to see it. And it's led to business. And so it's worth it. It's not necessarily the only thing I want to be doing with these custom One Love paintings, but these are the pieces that get really emotional and really excited for people. And so I feel like it's working for me.
Yeah, I think that's great insight for people to hear as well. $10 a day, ideally, hopefully you have that in your budget, even $5 a day. La Russell, who is a hip hop artist out of California, he's for me the future of hip hop. The way he's kind of done it organically, started in the pandemic. He uses his backyard, but he's constantly talking on his own Instagram about how much money. I think he was saying the other day he spent 100K a month on just organic because you have to grow, but I'm sure it works out just as you said. For every dollar you're putting in, you're getting $10 out in work, $10 out in exposure, $10 out in someone who's then going to connect you. So, I wanted to ask you that from an artist perspective, because I know that is where you're building community, curating your community, and interacting, engaging with your community. As we kind of come to the end here, I wanted to ask you about what is the future signal of art? Where is it going? Where do you think it's going? Is it going to the experiential IRL events that you kind of create and that you curate? What are your thoughts?
I think experiential is going to be key moving forward. I think as AI takes over more and more, people are going to crave that clawback of being in person, connecting with people, and seeing that there is someone on the other side. And so I'm really grateful to be doing something I love and seeing that it's even growing more and more right now. I don't know if people should necessarily, a big arguing point in my career has been, do I follow what's hot and what's going on, or do I follow what's true to myself? And if those two things are aligned, I love it. But if it's not aligned, it doesn't feel great. Like, oh, I could go join this tech company because I've got this great idea and I could make a lot of money. But like, is that something I really want to do? Like, is it true to who I am? And so I feel like there is this essence of being like having one ear, out there, what's happening, what's going on now, where it's going, and really listening to your heart about like, this is where I want to be. So I think experiential is key. I think you want to sift through all the noise that's happening and trying to figure out a way that makes something special, make something connect, make something that people haven't seen before. I was really inspired, when I was doing this visual podcast of sorts called Illuminated. Did like 6 or 7 episodes where I cut up a book for an author or an artist, and I show it back to them. And I would always ask people, what does success mean to you? And everyone has a different version of success. I feel like it's incredibly important to figure out what your version of success is, because then you can figure out how you're going to aim toward it and also then be fulfilled. And I've heard many things like success is a mindset. I currently now say like, this is success, like 10, 15 times a day. Like I said it during this podcast. I say it when like I wake up with my son and we're playing toys in the morning, or like I get to drive him or pick him up from school. Like, but also from a professional standpoint, like, is success creating what you are meant to do and only you can do? Is success making sure that you are able to share your fruit with the world? Like, there's so many different versions of that. And so it's tough to hear what the future of art is. I think, it's even yesterday, what was it? Christie's digital art department closed and folded into their normal art department. So it was like they let a bunch of people go, and it's not going to have as much of a focus, and it's done less and less business every year. And it's not saying we're going to they didn't say we're going to stop selling digital art completely. They said we're going to fold it in, which is maybe cheaper, easier. Maybe they are going to, but like there are so many up and down factors, just like with the pricing of different coins, and like there's so many ups and downs. And I think what people say, like, what's the difference between fashion and style? It's like when you have the style, it doesn't matter what goes in and out of fashion. I feel like very similar in art. Like no matter what goes in and out of fashion, if you're true to your creative self, you're going to make it work.
That is an amazing answer, and I'm going to start asking this question to all my guests. And I will say you were the first guest that I had to ask about future signal over actual noise. I'm not sure if people will get that on the final recording, but it does sound like you have the landscapers.
Yeah, landscapers are. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. It's all
Thursday.
good.
Should have.
It's another challenge to the art world, the landscapers. We actually, and this is a little behind the scenes for people, we had talked about sharing a bunch of images, sharing your mural work, sharing probably some of the books that you've cut up, sharing your NFTs, sharing all of this. We somehow didn't get to it. I guess the conversation got away from us, but that is just the invitation for people to go check out your Instagram. I'm going to leave that in the show notes. I'll leave your handle in the show notes, and I'll leave your website and any other things. But I think your Instagram and your website do a really good job of kind of allowing people to see the work that you've done, what you're currently doing, and where you want to go. Marco, I know you got a busy day. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Jarrett. This was amazing. I appreciate you as a host and a friend, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks.